Conor McGregor is on steroids? Joaquin Buckley versus Chris Curtis sets for UFC 282. Khamzat Chimaev is scared of Paulo Costa. Derek the Gatekeeper Brunson in the UFC's middleweight division. Bellator is looking to sign Nate Diaz. Dana White saying that Nate Diaz was a horrible fight. It was a horrible fight for him to go out there and face Khamzat Chimaev. All of that in today's MMA news video. First and foremost is going to be Conor McGregor is on steroids? Conor McGregor? Alright, let me check out the tweet. Aaron Bronstetter on Twitter. Among those who have been tested in 2022 were John Hathaway, Travis Brown, Sheldon Westcott, all of whom who have not competed in the UFC for more than 5 years. And right now, as of today's video, after cross-referencing the entire active UFC roster with USADA's athlete test history database, I found that only one person in USADA's database goes by the name of Conor McGregor, was the only UFC fighter in the UFC right now, besides like the Dana White's Contender Series guys that just got added, that has not been tested by USADA in 2022. Nobody in the UFC has not been tested by USADA except for Conor McGregor. Now this is unprecedented news in the UFC's lightweight division, welterweight division, whatever division Conor McGregor is going to be fighting at. Because if you go over to his Instagram and you look at his physique right now, he's got veins bulging, he's looking bigger than ever, and now he's not getting tested by USADA. It's getting a little iffy there, guys. Conor McGregor not getting tested by USADA. According to the UFC's anti-doping policy, the only way McGregor would be exempt from testing would be if his UFC contract was terminated or he provided the UFC with a written notice that he was retiring. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at the rankings right now. He is currently number 11 in the UFC and has not been tested by USADA in 2022. And right here is the only way he could not be tested was that his UFC contract was terminated. He's no longer a UFC fighter or he is retired from MMA. Mind blown, ladies and gentlemen. Conor McGregor could be retired from MMA. He could be on steroids inside of the UFC. We have no idea what is happening here with Conor McGregor, but what do y'all think about McGregor on steroids? Is he on steroids? Is he not? Put your thoughts down below. We got Joaquin Buckley and Chris Curtis being set for UFC 282 on the main card. I'm really liking this one. Chris Curtis, 29-9, a veteran inside and outside of the UFC, 35 years old, pretty similar height, pretty similar reach, beating Rodolfo Vieira, Brendan Allen, Phil Halls, and only losing to Jack Hermanson. Now he's fighting Joaquin Buckley, who beat Antonio Arroyo, Abdulrazak Al Hassan, Albert Dorayev, and only losing to Nasruddin Imavov recently inside of the UFC. My early prediction, I'm going to go Joaquin Buckley to win that fight by a decision, although I think it's going to be a very close one, 29-28, that could go either way. Who do you guys think wins, Joaquin Buckley or Chris Curtis? Paulo Costa says Chimaev is scared to fight him. In a recent video on his Instagram, he's talking in his traditional Brazilian accent that Khamzat Chimaev, I don't know how to do the accent, Khamzat Chimaev is scared to fight me. Stupid Chechen gangster, Chechen boy Khamzat Chimaev is scared to fight me. I've been calling for the UFC to fight Khamzat Chimaev, but the UFC is not down to do a Khamzat Chimaev Paulo Costa fight. That is from Paulo Costa. Paulo is saying Khamzat Chimaev is scared to fight scared to fight Paulo Costa in the UFC. But if that fight were to ever happen, who would win, Paulo Costa or Khamzat Chimaev? Chimaev. We got Dana White saying Chimaev would have been a horrible matchup for Nate Diaz inside of the UFC, and I would have to freaking agree with that assessment by Dana White. If Khamzat Chimaev were to fight Nate Diaz in the UFC at UFC 279, I'm going to tell you right now, it would have been a massacre. How easily Khamzat Chimaev got the takedown against Kevin Holland was absolutely insane, and Nate Diaz got taken down by Tony Ferguson. Did get a guillotine in the fight, but you know, Khamzat's not getting caught in no guillotine from Nate Diaz. Would have just pulled it right over and started ground and pounding. I mean, Nate Diaz would have been cut open so badly, bleeding all over the place, and Khamzat would have submitted him or ground and pound TKO'd him. So in this instance, I would have to agree with Dana White saying Chimaev would have been a horrible matchup inside of the UFC. We got Derek the Gatekeeper Brunson in the middleweight division about to fight Jack Hermanson inside of the UFC, the number 5 ranked middleweight in the world. We look at recent fights. Jared Cannonier beat Derek Brunson at UFC 271, immediately got a title shot right after. Gatekeeper Derek Brunson. Darren Till went out there and fought against Derek Brunson. Most likely would have been very close to a title shot had he beat Derek Brunson at UFC London, but he ended up losing and therefore did not end up getting a title shot. Gatekeeper Kevin Holland, after his crazy win streak inside of the UFC, beating Charlie Ontiveros, Darren Stewart, Joaquin Buckley, Anthony Hernandez, and Ronaldo Souza. Then he fought Derek Brunson in a main event and lost. Gatekeeper Edmund Shabazian, 11-0, undefeated, beating Brad Tavares, Charles Bert, Darren Stewart, and then Jack Marshman, about to get a good shot to boost him up the rankings against Derek Brunson, but he loses. Gatekeeper, I mean, all of these scenarios, even Israel Adesanya fighting against Derek Brunson immediately after that win over Derek Brunson. Guess who he fought next? Anderson the Spider Silva, in a fight later, was the interim champion. Then he was the UFC champion. So again, I kid you not, Derek Brunson is such a gatekeeper of the middleweight division. Guys that have beat him inside of the UFC, champion. Number 1 contender that got a title shot after beating Derek Brunson. Jared Cannonier, who got a title shot after beating Derek Brunson inside of the UFC. And all the guys that are losing to Derek Brunson probably would have gotten title shots had they beat Derek Brunson in those fights. So I'll kid you not, Derek Brunson is the gatekeeper of the middleweight division 100%. We got Bellator looking to sign Nate Diaz after his contract with the UFC is over. There's still like a few more weeks or months that the UFC has the rights that nobody can do any contracts or sign Nate Diaz for a few more weeks, a few more months. But once that signing period is over, Bellator is looking to sign Nate Diaz for the UFC's welterweight division, and they're looking to pay him a lot of money. Scott Coker said in a recent interview he would really like Nate Diaz, and yesterday was looking to try to get Anderson Silva to the UFC. Now looking for Nate Diaz. Do we get a potential Nate Diaz-Anderson Silva fight? I don't know. Nate Diaz-Anderson Silva in the UFC's welterweight or middleweight division is a possibility, in my opinion, to happen. I doubt it will happen, but there's a good possibility it could. And last but not least, Nate Diaz retiring Khamzat Chimaev. He said in a recent interview, he said, "I just retired Khamzat Chimaev from the welterweight division. Because of me, he will no longer be fighting in the welterweight division." Absolutely insane. But that's what we got for you in today's MMA news. We got Conor McGregor not getting drug tested by USADA. Joaquin, Buckley, Chris Curtis sets for UFC 282. Paulo, Costa. Khamzat Chimaev is scared to fight him. Dana White says Chimaev would have been a horrible matchup for Nate Diaz. Bellator looking to sign Nate Diaz. Derek the Gatekeeper Brunson, and Nate Diaz retiring Khamzat Chimaev. That is what I got for y'all in today's video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.